I've never used a mic before. Okay, so good evening, everybody. I'm Maria Riga Gonzalez, the mayor of Richfield. Welcome to our beautiful community in Richfield. Thank you to the public schools for hosting. Thank you to the hosts and the organizers of this event. This is a very important meeting that we're having today to learn and inform ourselves as a community about our candidates for sheriff. As you know, there's so many things on the line across the nation in all of our races. Nationally, our rights and our civil rights are on the line. Our sense of community and connection and health is on the line. And in these votes and in these campaigns, we are voting in some cases, unfortunately in many cases, between stripping away and losing our rights or advancing hope, equity, connection, and a new form of governance that can really bring our community in. And so I know there's a lot of people watching here in person, but we also have several folks streaming online. Please make sure that you share the information about this race and all the other local races with your friends, your colleagues, your community members. Put the information online because we know people don't vote all the way down the ballot. So we need to make sure that we're doing that. So I just wanted to welcome you as mayor to this event, to our beautiful community, and ask you to please do everything you can to advocate for everyone in your circles and in your networks to vote and to make informed decisions. And thank you for taking that step to be here today in that process. I will pass it on. Do I pass it on to our moderator now? I'll pass it on to you. Great, thank you.
Thank you so much, Maria. It's wonderful hearing elected officials really urging us to make informed votes and being involved in our civic system. My name is Rebecca. I use she, they pronouns. I'm the organizing director of Minnesota 8. Minnesota 8 provides support to Southeast Asian people facing deportation. We're also a proud member of the Decriminalizing Communities Coalition, which is a group of over 30 organizations committed to supporting community members at the intersection of immigration and criminal justice issues. And we're really glad to be here with the two candidates tonight. And I also really want to thank the other organizations that put in tireless hours into planning this event. So thank you, Jewish Community Action, MIRAC, Minnesota Freedom Fund, CARE Minnesota, Shir Tikva, Minnesota Council of Churches, Communities United Against Police Brutalities, African Career Education and Resources, the Interfaith Coalition on Immigration, and Unidos Minnesota. And thank you all for taking time out of your Thursday evenings to come here and to learn about candidate stances. We're so excited to be hosting this in-person and virtual event tonight for everyone. And as Maria said, we believe the role of the sheriff is extremely important in shaping public safety in Hennepin County. And in particular, I think about how this position has a great impact on community members, especially those from communities that have been historically and presently over-surveilled and over-policed. And I'm thinking a lot about the people who we serve at Minnesota 8, who are Southeast Asian folks facing deportation and many other people. And back in the summer, Decriminalizing Communities Coalition sent a questionnaire to all of the Hennepin County Sheriff candidates. And the results of that questionnaire are still on our website, decriminalizemn.org. It should be on the agenda that you all received while coming in as well. And we're really excited to be here today to host a follow-up event for us to dive deeper into the two candidates on the ballot this November. For tonight's forum, we have a list of 10 questions prepared ranging from a wide range of issues, from police accountability to protecting local residents from the harms of ICE. We will switch the order in the candidate answers for each question, and we're going to first start off with 6 questions where each candidate will have a strict 2-minute limit, and then we'll have a lightning round questions with simpler questions with a 1-minute response time. And candidates, please feel free to use less time, as that would also give us more time for audience questions. And we'll also have time at the end for folks who are on live stream or in person to share their questions as well with everyone. And audience members, you have your agenda and your note packets. Feel free to use that to take down any reflections or notes or things that strike you as interesting tonight. And I did want to let everyone know that there is a bathroom and water by that exit over there, just in case you need to use the facilities or get a drink of water. And now I want to introduce Simon Troutman, who will be the moderator for tonight's event. Thank you for taking time to moderate today. And I am going to read off a little bit of Simon's accomplishments. It was really awesome getting to see some of those. So Simon is our moderator, and he is a board member of the Minnesota Justice Coalition. He founded the firm Troutman Martin Law, where he practices law with 6 other excellent attorneys. He recently succeeded in expanding voting rights for individuals on probation in the case of DFL and Norma McCourt versus Steve Simon and the state of Minnesota. He also co-chairs City Leaders Against Wage Theft and Tax Fraud, which is a group of elected leaders across the state committed to economic justice for working people. He is a twice elected council member in Richfield, where we are tonight, and he even attended Richfield High School, where we are tonight. So thank you again, Simon.
Well, first of all, I just want to thank everybody for coming out on what's probably the coldest night of the fall so far. And I really want to thank both of our candidates. And over the next hour, there are a few things that I'm going to say a few nice things about them because I happen to think a couple of nice things about both of these candidates, and just several. We only have an hour. I want to give you all the time that you can. But what we're going to do is we're going to ask these questions in an open way. Our goal is just to hear your heart and your vision, and for you to be as specific as you can be, specifically in areas that relate to our immigrant community and building institutional change and institutional trust. And I like to think of this conversation as a capacity building conversation, because as we build trust in community, we're building capacity for this office that I know you both care about very deeply. And so what we're going to do now, and thank you first to Rebecca and to everybody who came together to make this event possible. I also just want to say a thank you to Richfield High School and the Richfield School District for making this great facility available. Thank you very much. And with that, let's get to the main event. And so the main event here, we're going to start with an opening question and introductions, and each of you will have 2 minutes to share a little bit about yourself. And so for opening statements, we'll start with Mr. Joe. Oh, before this, I promised a couple of great things that I think about both of these folks. And both of them, to serve in a countywide position is to receive countywide scrutiny. And that is to be commended for both of you. Both of you are not new to leadership. Both of you are not new to law enforcement and making really hard decisions and being present in community. So I want to thank you both for the service that you've brought to this position and to your vision and what you're going to share here. And so with that, we'll start with you, Joe Banks, opening statement, 2 minutes.
Well, thank you guys for having me. My name is Joe Banks, and let me tell you a little bit about kind of who I am. I've been around law enforcement of some kind since I was a kid in the Explorers, moved my way up to the Cadets, joined the Marine Corps Reserves, came back, became a dispatcher. Started my career down in Illinois in June 1990, moved here in Minnesota in 1993. Kind of went to college at Central Lakes College up in Brainerd. Since then, did security, law enforcement for years now. I'm a retired chief now. I've been a chief in the state of Minnesota 3 times. I've worked in multiple different positions, working with both federal and state organizations. My last positions at the tribal police departments was a very unique experience for me because it taught me to work with those federal organizations to keep people safe in large capacities. My philosophy right now, law enforcement that I'm using right now, is basically teaching our cops to use more discretional authority and to determine whether or not a situation is a teachable moment or an arrestable moment. So I want to make sure that folks know that we don't have to arrest everybody all the time. There are certain situations where we are governed to arrest folks, but we're going to be looking to make sure that we've exhausted all means in between, because this is what affects our youth moving forward. And so that's kind of why I decided to take this chance and run. And of course, after hearing from, sorry about that, Jamar Clark, the Jamar Clark situation, George Floyd, and Terrence Franklin. Those situations right there that went unchecked in Minneapolis was one of my big motivations about, I can't get this thing off. All right. Pardon me, guys. All right, new phone. All right.
That's about. We'll give you 10 bonus seconds.
All right. So I mean, in the end, my goal here is really to keep people safe in Hennepin County. I really want to lower violent crime, and that's one of the big things.
That's 10 seconds.
Thank you.
Yeah. Ms. Dewana-Witt.
Green means go. Good evening, everyone. My name is Dewana-Witt. I am currently a major at the Hennepin County Sheriff's Office. A little bit about me. I can tell you that I never expected to see myself in law enforcement. Growing up in South Minneapolis, I will say that I share a lot of the concerns that we're hearing from the community today. And that's one of the reasons why it was a surprise. Becoming a mother at age 15 and having to push my way through hardships, making sure that I graduated and make sure I provided my daughter with a better life than I had, was very important to me. And I did that. I started my career actually working for a nonprofit, Reuben Lynn and Pillsbury Neighborhood Services, primarily with families that had chemical dependency issues and open child protection cases, because that was something that I could resonate with. After doing that for several years, one day I went on a tour at the jail. Hennepin County Jail. When I was at the Hennepin County Jail, they talked about how they needed women, specifically women of color, in this profession. To me, that was different working in a jail versus someone in a squad car, because I was that kid who was afraid of police. And I started working in a jail. And it was there that I started working with more law enforcement officials, getting to know them as an individual, going beyond the uniform, going beyond the badge. Since here we are nearly 23 years later, I have worked hard, working my way up the ranks in various positions, but none of those positions never excluded community, because I never forgot where I came from or how people made me feel. And that's how I always led my profession. And I'm still here. And with all the scrutiny today, as we see, you know what? I am that voice for all community, because again, I didn't forget where I came from or how people made me feel. Thank you.
Thank you. And with that, we'll start with our first question, and this question builds on your opening statement. And so you both have had the opportunity to really share your ideas over these last several months. What makes you the best candidate for Hennepin County Sheriff? And then specifically, what will you do to measure that success in the coming years? And we'll start. And should we use Major and former Chief Banks? Does that work?
That's fine.
Yes. Major Witt.
What makes me the best candidate? As I said, I didn't forget where I came from. So in this profession, I lead with passion. That is what fuels me even today with everything that is going on. We need people here to do this work. And we need people with the right vision, the experience to do that. As I said, I used to say it was an accident, me in this profession. It wasn't. It was my purpose, because I know I made changes throughout my profession, trying to educate people to lives different from the ones that they know of or the ones that they had. You know, being at the table is not enough. It's also being that voice. And I take every moment as an educational moment. Volunteer, that's huge. You know, I started coaching kids in the community as a resident of Riverside Plaza, teaching kids for the first time organized sports. Many of those kids, as you know, are immigrants, and English is not their first language. So that was so rewarding in itself. Some of those kids, I'll tell you, I even have relationships with here 30 years later. that was really good. What also makes me the best candidate is right now, we need someone who understands how the sheriff's office operates. We don't have time to go back and train someone into that position. We need someone who's ready from day one. I've worked hard my entire career. If you pull me up, you look at my resume, you will see that I didn't just come to the forefront because I am running for this position. You will see that's who I've always been throughout my 20+ years in this profession, leading from the front with compassion and empathy. You can't have those things and still also hold people accountable. They're not exchangeable. We need it all, and I am that total package. Thank you.
Former Chief Banks.
Sure. I think what makes me the best candidate is that, stepping away as the chief and having a chance to just go back to being a regular citizen. Sometimes you can get systematized, right? You kind of get into the system and you begin to start folding with the way things have been set in place, that cookie cut place. But I've had a chance to see how what we do affect people. And in this career, you have to look back and see how we affect people. And then you have to make adjustments to that to make things better for those people. That's what makes me the better candidate. I've already started a nonprofit organization, Twin Cities Recovery Project, to assist folks living with opiate addictions, to teach them to live in life in recovery. As you know, many of the people that we deal with have mental health issues and substance abuse issues. This is not a reason for people to be locked up and put away. This is a reason for them to get treatment, education, and possibly reunified into the community. I care about the people. I see the people, and I'm affected by what happens in our community every day. Just like what happened here in Richfield with the shooting here while the kids were playing football. It was real time for me because that was one of my sons on the field playing during the time of that. And so that's what makes me the candidate, because I care about the people. I'm experiencing it with the people daily. I have the training, the education, and the background to lead this agency. I've led agencies in the past. So I feel like what makes me the better candidate is I already have a blueprint. I've already put in the work. I already have a plan to bring Hennepin County back together.
Well, thank you both, and I'm gonna call an audible. I'm gonna put 30 seconds back on the clock for both of you, just because it's a two-part question, and I want to give you the opportunity because I think the second part is how you'll measure your success. And so if I could just phrase that, and just real quick, this is our pre-lightning round. In 2 or 3 sentences, how do you want to be evaluated in 4 years? What are the measurements you're going to look at? We'll start with you, former Chief Banks.
I want to look at where crime is right now, gauge where I've lowered it to, and how many people I've been able to keep safe.
Thank you.
The community determines how effective I have been. I, as a single person, do not see everything. So it's those relationships with the community and engaging in the community, and it is they who will say how effective my leadership has been.
Thank you both. Our next question is something all of our organizations are concerned about is safety for immigrants. Currently, Hennepin County is home to 1.3 million people, and over 14% of these residents, our neighbors, schoolmates, and co-workers are immigrants. So would you consider forming an advisory board of immigrants, both documented and undocumented, to assist your department in ensuring the needs of your community are being met? And if not that, is there another way to invite input from our residents to do this? And then I know that could be a yes or no question, so take that as an opportunity to expand on how either through a platform like that, or what kind of platform, what would that look like in your administration? We'll start with you, former Chief Banks.
I think I would definitely form that committee. I've worked with quite a few immigrants to this day in the community, and I think some of those barriers are cultures, understanding the cultures, understanding the language, understanding the people, and the challenges that they face with navigating throughout our community. I've had a chance to navigate some of those situations, so I understand that they're extremely difficult. Definitely would look forward to having a committee of folks that I could communicate with that would allow me to address some of the concerns that those folks have.
Well, thank you. Major Witt.
That's actually a two-part answer for me. So committees are great, but we also know that there is no one committee that can represent every community within Hennepin County. This is a large county. So coupled with having an advisory group, we also need the engagement piece in the community, right? Because we do know that when committees are formed, sometimes they also get one-sided and they forget about other people. But I think it's more important to make sure, as a sheriff, that I do my best to make sure I hear from all citizens of Hennepin County. Thank you.
Thank you. So our next question is, Hennepin County residents who are immigrants, even those who are documented, are targeted by Immigration and Customs Enforcement, or ICE. Between 2016 and June of 2021, the Sheriff's Office collaborated with ICE officials to detain and deport hundreds of our neighbors. On June 9th, 2021, the Sheriff's Office committed to protecting immigrant residents by no longer sharing detainee information with ICE or withholding them longer for ICE arrests. So the question would be, would you consider this administrative directive? Why or why not? And then a follow-up to that is, what's your vision for interacting with ICE and other federal agencies? How do you see your role as the sheriff interacting with those agencies? And we'll start with former Chief Banks.
Okay. I want to say that definitely, I mean, I'm going to keep that in place. And the biggest thing that when we deal with that is that I look at the fact that traditionally over the years we have held on to people simply because of their ethnicity or their status. And I've always thought that it was important that we only dealt with the reason why they were in jail. And the fact that they were outside the United States shouldn't affect whether or not we're having immigration come down and speak with them. And in a lot of cases, those situations tore families apart. When that person would have normally walked out the door in that situation, immigration was called and that person was held unnecessarily. So I definitely would be all over the top of that.
All right, thank you. Major Witt?
It's my name that's on that directive from June 2021. I am the major who signed that directive that we will no longer cooperate with ICE. Moving forward, I will continue that direction. I think it's also important to know, like, just there's the many aspects that go into that. For example, grant sign, making sure that you know what are you actually signing your organization up to. You know, like JAG grants, which you will cooperate with ICE. Well, we made a very strong stance that, you know what, that grant not only affects the Sheriff's Office, but the arresting agencies as well as everything else. So we need to do a better job of making sure what we're signing up for, because sometimes there's bad intentions. And that goes back to the advisory boards. How does this affect the community? So taking a deeper dive in that. My long answer made short, yes, I will continue that directive that I signed in June of 2021.
Great, thank you. So our next question is, under your leadership, will ICE officials be permitted into the jails to talk with inmates? And then a follow-up questions are, will your decisions change depending on the person's citizenship status? And if yes, what else would you do to ensure immigrants in your custody receive the protection of your discretion and the rule of law? I'm sorry, and yes, Major Witt.
So ICE is a law enforcement agency. We are allowing them to come in and interview people. Because we have to follow the law, that is very important to know. So how do you counter that? Is we made sure that we worked with other agencies that would ensure that we are doing our best job to inform everybody in the jail, despite what their immigration status is, as to if they have to speak with law enforcement. For example, if somebody from ICE did show up, the people would know ahead of time, because it's posted by every phone and such, that it is their right to say no. They do not and will not think that they have to because a law enforcement entity shows up. And that's with all of the people that are in our custody.
Great, thank you, Major Witt.
I feel like I missed a part, did I?
So it was, will your decision change? And then you have the question, and just so folks know, right before about 5 minutes before the event, we shared with both of the candidates a written copy of the questions so that they could follow along. It says, would your decision change depending on the person's citizenship status? And if yes, would you ensure immigrants in your custody are protected? So I think you answered that question. Thank you.
Okay.
Former Chief Banks.
I would have to echo what Ms. Witt said. The only caveat to that is, in following the laws, at some point your hands are a little bit tied, but for the most part, I'm going to be definitely making sure that people aren't coming inside the jail unnecessarily to interview individuals. I think it's already posted in the jails anyway, like Ms. Witt said, but I think we have to take it one step further too, to actually figure out a way to have a conversation with ICE and our federal partners to see if there's some changes that we can make to that.
Thank you. And just as a note to folks in our audience, we will be taking questions at the end of our questions here. So as you're listening, if you have questions, if you're listening online, feel free. I'm assuming there's a chat function, and you can submit it there. And then just for folks here, do we have cards that we hand out, or how can folks? Oh, we have a mic. Excellent, fantastic. That's great. All right. So our next question is, in 2019, the Hennepin County Jail launched a medication-assisted treatment program allowing people to continue their ongoing treatment for substance abuse disorder in jail. Eventually, a team of drug treatment specialists was added to the jail staff. Will you continue this program? And if so, how? And what can you share your vision about for substance abuse in the prisons? And we'll start with Major Witt.
Yes, I will continue MAT, Medical Assistant Treatment Program. That is a program that we're very proud of. We work very closely with Hennepin Health to make sure that we are up to date with any studies out there, any funding that helps it, because it's something that we're consistently looking for funding, but it is needed. In addition, we have also added releasing people with the medication that they need, so in case there is that time lapse where they're getting to wherever that treatment that they need is, that they're not leaving the jail without it. Because we know that there's a lot of mishaps that can happen from point A to point B. So we're doing our part there. As far as growing the program, that's something that we're always trying to do. How can we do better? How can we be better? The bottom line is, people who are in jail, they're human beings too. And when we're talking about how to make our community safer, we need to think about in what condition we release people. So we're always looking for ways that we can do better and be better and do our part, which is to treat people with dignity and respect and make sure that we can release them with the healthiest mind, body, spirit as possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Major Witt. Chief Banks?
Yes, I would definitely continue that program. And to follow up with that, I would also refer folks to our services along with other services that we have at Twin Cities Recovery Project, which supports all pathways to recovery. We would do our best to partner them up with a peer recovery coach so that once they're outside the jails, they could navigate their way through the recovery system. The biggest part of that program and other programs is that people need a life after treatment. And a lot of times they need that reunification into the community, they need that education piece. And currently, right now, we've partnered up with the city of Minneapolis for a program that's called Operation Safe Stations to assist with that thing.
No, thank you. And since we have just a minute, I'm just going to ask one more question, kind of in that vein. In the last several years, I believe it's the HOPE program, but the program that provides education for folks in the county that are in the county detention facility. And I wondered if either both of you could share for a moment what your vision is for education and resources for folks that you have incarcerated. But before you do that, I just want to remind everybody who's here that for those of you that are Zooming, I'm sorry we can't help you, but we have cider and we have refreshments in the back. And so it's totally appropriate to stand up in the middle of this and get some hot cider and enjoy the refreshments. And so we'll finish this question and then we'll move into the lightning round where everybody will so you'll have a minute. So it's more like rolling thunder than lightning, but quick questions, and then we'll take questions from the audience. But we'll start with a retired chief or former Chief Banks.
So, in terms of education piece, I believe they actually offer an education piece in the jail already, but I would like to take it one step further because I know in dealing with quite a few folks, what I've learned over the years now is we need a way to empower people through education of the laws themselves. A lot of people don't understand the laws that they're being accused of breaking, and or what those pathways look like. They're not being represented properly in the attorney system. They're not being informed properly at the deputy level and at the police level. So I think we would take it one step further to try to expand that education to allow people to actually learn what's happening to them while they're in the jail.
Great. Thank you, Major Witt.
So the HOPE program, I'm proud to say, is another initiative under my watch at the Hennepin County Sheriff's Office. HOPE stands for Helping Others by Providing Education. In 2019, when I learned that the primary people that got educational programs were those between the ages of 18 and 21 and were part of Minneapolis public schools, that was not good enough. Hennepin County Jail is the largest jail in the state and the most populated jail. That is where HOPE basically came from. In addition to that, we have also added like other services, like we're thinking, we have already like had a resource fair. Hennepin County Jail had their first resource fair, which not only had educational programs from the community, but job sources, housing. We brought that into the jail. I was told we can't do that, they're in the jail. Yeah, we can, and we're doing it, and we did it. And you know what? We're going to continue to build off of that, not just the education. We know if somebody's working on a GED, if they get released, they can go somewhere else and continue those sources. Jail time should not and will not be dead time under my watch. We have people's attention there, and we should be pouring in many resources. Every life is important, even if they're in jail. You know, something else that we know is that when people who are in custody do not have structure and they don't have something that helps stimulate their brains, that's where you see increased assaults, whether it's inmate to inmate or to staff. We have to have structure in the jails, not just with education, but everything else from finances to parenting to law, and in doing that. Trust me, they got a lot of time on their hand in jail, so let's fill it in with things that are productive, that will help them be productive citizens when they leave. Most people who go to jail do not go to prison, they go back into their communities. So we need to pull the resources there to make sure that we do our part to make sure they have a better chance of succeeding and we decrease real recidivism. Thank you.
Thank you. And now we're going to transition into our Rolling Thunder round. And so here's our first question. In Hennepin County earlier this year, local police officers killed a Mirlock, and as a result, it was a result of a no-knock warrant. On our questionnaire several months ago, you both responded that you would change Hennepin County's search warrant policy to prevent county law enforcement from requesting or participating in no-knock warrants of any kind. And so our question is, could you describe your proposed policy changes and let the audience know if your position has changed since you answered the questionnaire? And we'll start with former Chief Banks.
I think my position is the same. I would just simply add the fact that what happened in the Mirlock case that frustrated me the most was that when I looked at the video, I did not see law enforcement allowing this young man to acknowledge their presence. When we enter people's homes, it is their homes. How we find them is how we find them, but we should always consider the fact that people are in their homes. And having someone enter your home unannounced and not taking the precaution to give them the time to acknowledge your presence puts both officers and the individual's safety at risk. So I would definitely stand behind making sure that we are letting people know when we walk in those homes.
Thank you. Excuse me. Thank you. Major Witt?
Hennepin County has stopped the common practice of no-knock warrants. we are no longer participating in them. However, I want to be honest and clear. Sometimes there will be instances where no-knocks need to be considered, but it will not be because preservation of evidence. It can be preservation of life. For instance, hostage situations and things like that. It is very apparent that no-knock warrants were going unchecked. So we need to do a better job of making sure that those checks are being done, those checks and balances. And what is it that we're really trying to do? Again, not to preserve evidence, but to preserve a life. And I would find it hard to believe that there's anybody here, if their loved one was someone in a home where that was the only method to be used to save that loved one, that you would say, don't do it. And so I just want to make sure I'm clear on that, but that's not our common practice. Thank you.
Thank you both. I'm just going to ask a bonus lightning round clarifying question. And because no-knock warrants mean different things and are it's a term that's used in different ways in different contexts. Could both of you give us a brief description of what a no-knock warrant means to you? Whether that's breach or breach in whole, or can you just describe what is that when we say no-knock warrants have been banned? I think a lot of people in community thought that no-knock warrants were already banned, and then found that they weren't. And so just if you could share 60 seconds, what does that mean for you? And thank you for sharing the exceptions, but just I want to give you an opportunity to expand. Former Chief Banks.
Yeah, for me, the no-knock warrant simply means that it was designed to give officers the advantage when entering a place, either to protect them from high-risk individuals that we thought would be threatening to the officers or pose a high safety risk to the officers. But when I look at the no-knock warrant, it doesn't serve an immediate purpose all the time. We're there to make an arrest. That's no secret, right? Them being aware that we're there is not going to change our reason for being there. And so I really wholeheartedly think that before we enter people's houses, letting them know, giving them a chance to acknowledge our presence and respond to our commands. The person could willingly walk out the door, right? So we don't always have to rush in. I just want to make sure that's something that's clear.
Great, thank you. Major Witt.
When thinking of a no-knock warrant, you have to think that they are initiated at some of the most vulnerable times, like nighttime, when people are sleeping, or when there's less activity in the house. So the element of surprise is much greater. It's also not only the time of day, or I should say the time of night or early morning, it's also that element of surprise where there is little to no announcement before breaking into a door or entering whatever structure that is. So I think those are the things that people need to consider when we're talking about no-knock warrants.
Great. Thank you both. Next question. As data has shown us for decades and was recently highlighted again in the Department of Human Rights report on the Minneapolis Police Department, policing in Minnesota has a long history of bias and racial discrimination without a track record of accountability. Issues like these go beyond the sheriff's office itself. What concrete steps would you take as sheriff to advance racial equity? And we'll start with Major Witt.
I never forgot where I came from. I know what it feels like to be marginalized, scrutinized, stereotyped because of the color of my skin. As I told you earlier, I remember that, never forgot where I came from, and that's how I've always led myself in this profession. I do believe in leading from the front. Every moment is an educational moment. So when we're talking about racial equity, I know what it feels like to be the one walking into a room, being the only one who looks like me. That takes away from us being our best selves, right? That comfort level. And so making sure that I do my best to exemplify that by making sure that representation has to be a priority all the time. Not sometimes, but all the time, because we come to this life with different lenses, and it's very important to have all those lenses present. Thank you.
Thank you, Major Witt. Former Chief Banks.
Definitely making sure that the officers understand cultural differences, making sure that we try to do our best to ensure that the departments reflect the communities in which they serve. and definitely allowing people to come out from the community and get those jobs in law enforcement. But making sure that we're clear that we're treating people with respect and dignity all the time. The squad cars used to say to protect and serve. We have to actually mean that, to protect and serve. Give good customer service. It is okay to give someone a ride home in a squad car who's had too much to drink at night.
Yeah. Thank you. Next question. How would you work with other officials like the county attorney and district judges to make the county's public safety system as a whole more equitable? And we'll start with you, former Chief Banks.
This is a tough one because, like I said, I see this every day. These young men and women don't get proper representation.
Yeah.
I really think that the Public Defender's Office could do a much better job with identifying what's really happening here and making sure these people are making informed decisions. This realistically is more like 10 minutes before they walk into court and they're making a life-changing decision. It's important that they actually get real representation. So I would talk with our county attorneys to make sure that they're actually getting proper representation, and in cases of violent offenses, that we're holding people accountable that need to be held accountable.
Thank you, Chief Banks. Major Witt.
I make sure that I'm at the table. Currently, I am an active participant of the Hennepin County Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, as well as the, oh goodness, I'm going blank here, disparities reduction part. Those teams involve county level, is from county attorneys to public defender to city officials to city attorneys, and we're all at the table, constantly looking at, okay, how can we make sure that the system as a whole is equitable? What's important is that we have all parties at the table to have those conversations, and they're not always easy conversations to have, but they need to be had. But again, not just having that seat at the table, but being that voice at the table, making sure that you are truly representing what's going on in the community. And the only way to do that is to make sure that you have those open communications, not sometimes, not when things go bad, but all the time. Thank you.
Thank you both. Our next question is, the Hennepin County Sheriff's Department does not currently have any civilian oversight mechanism. There isn't even a link on the website where people can submit a complaint. How do you believe civilian oversight of law enforcement agencies, or do you believe that it's important? And if yes, how would you implement oversight in your office? And we'll start with Major Witt.
You should know one of the initiatives that I want when I become Hennepin County Sheriff is to make sure that we do have a dashboard where people can do those things and not have a complicated one that discourages people from actually completing that work or looking into it. Civilian Oversight Board, what I think is very important is, I'm sorry, as somebody in law enforcement, I can't have a dentist come tell me how to do my job. So when we say civilian oversight, we need to make sure that people are educated as far as the policies, the what and the whys of what we do. So it can't just be anyone, and it can't be anyone who has narrow views, but I do believe, again, that we need those partnerships, right? And we need to have all those voices at the table. But I am very careful with saying civilian oversight because, there's certain trainings, there's trainings that have to go along with this. But that's why we have civilian advisory board, if you will. That's something if an elected official, such as the sheriff, is using that civilian advisory board, that is somewhat of an oversight because you're passing those policies on to them and asking for feedback. And so I do believe strongly in that. Thank you.
Thank you, Major Witt. Chief Banks?
I believe that civilian oversight is important. It's one of the reasons why my team and I created a software that would actually track officer behavior in real time so that we can see what our officers are doing throughout the county. But we took it one step further, and so this software would also allow citizens to see what's happening in real time because we can't catch everything. But we're following that up with also having it reviewed, our findings reviewed by both civilian and law enforcement committee combined. And then if there's an action that needs to be taken, we're going to take that action and that information gets reported to the post board for what they would do from that point forward. This prevents officers from leaving one department and going to another prior to being fired.
Thank you. We have We now, if hopefully folks that are here have had an opportunity to get beverages, to get refreshment, we're now going to have opportunities. How many people, just by a show of hands, just so I can gauge, have a question that they would like to ask one of the candidates? 1, 2, oh, 3. Okay, so we have several, and then I was just going to ask, yeah, do we have online questions? Okay, great. So we'll start with folks that are here in the room, and so if you want to either make a line or come up one at a time, we'd love to have your question.
Hello.
Hello. Yeah. If you want to introduce yourself real briefly and.
Yeah, my name is Miguel Hernandez, and resident of Bloomington, if that matters. But my question to you folks is, at a time where we're seeing a lot of backlash after an uprising of activists, of change of law enforcement, of practices, what would you folks do to deter this backlash? Right now there's tons of government forces who are doubling down on more police. We see it in Minneapolis. What kind of things would you do to not fall into that backlash as well?
Maybe we'll start with Major Witt.
So I want to make sure I'm understanding your question, and when you say backlash, can you be more specific, please?
Yeah, like police reform backlash. Like people don't want to change from what we've had before or continue to have.
So for me, I could tell you I was a participant of the Minnesota Task Force for Law Enforcement Education Reform, which included law enforcement, activists, educators. I'm also an educator at Inver Hills Community College. We sent some recommendations to the Post Board as a group about like reform. And what's important about that, again, having everyone at the table. It was for law enforcement education reform. We know that it's the Post Board that activates the license for all peace officers in the state. So that was a step. Something else is when we did have the unrest in downtown, I was that leader that was out there actually talking to people that were out there, making sure that people understood. They wanted their voices heard, making sure that they understood what the rules were so that those things would happen. Right? And that was unique because people are like, what are you going to do? Well, guess what? I'm going to go talk to people. And that actually worked, where I talked to the organizers. I knew that what they were there for was important to them. And so we had to talk about like how can their voices be heard in a way that did not break any laws or anything like that. Thank you.
Thank you. And Chief Banks?
Again, it's taking it back to the people. Right? Law enforcement is just that, law enforcement, but the power comes from the people. So I would definitely work with the people so they understand what those laws are, what the rules are, so that they could change those policies they see that they want changed. That is the biggest part about this new movement, is that we have to empower you to know what the process is with your legislators to change the laws that you feel are unjust or the policies that departments are using.
Thanks for that.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. So there's so many questions I could ask you guys, but how aggressive would you be about police murders that occur inside the jails? Do you think you could be impartial? Because I didn't bring my stats with me, but I think there's been 7 deaths in Hennepin County Jail that were never publicized. And how were you guys involved with that?
And we'll start with former Chief Banks and then Major Witt.
Okay, so I think I would definitely be on top of that. The biggest thing is this: when people are incarcerated, we're responsible for their safety. Most importantly, the families want to know what happened to their loved ones. It's important that we have a transparent investigation. I would definitely have an outside agency taking a look at that to make sure that we had a fresh set of clean eyes on that and that we're keeping people informed every step of the way. Now, it is an investigation, so there will be limited information, but we will do our best to be clear on exactly what's happening.
And Major Witt?
So I'm going to clarify. there have been 0 murders in the Hennepin County Jail. There have not been murders. Have people died in the custody? Yes, but something that we touched on earlier is that it's the most populated jail. So we sometimes have some of the sickest people, whether it is physically sick or mental health sick. And, we do our best to make sure that we are keeping everyone safe and getting them the services that they need. But again, we've had no murders. So if I could finish answering, but with that being said, yes, you're right. Something that we should have is being very transparent when we have things going on. But I tell you this, I've also heard people who say they don't want to find out in the news or they don't want to find out on social media about their loved ones being going from the jail to the hospital. So some of it, not only is it policies or laws, but some of it is the respect of the family, because the family is the ones who deserve to know first.
I can understand that, but just because a law enforcement someone loses their life at the hands of someone in law enforcement, I still consider it murder.
Oh.
And I appreciate your characterization, but it's murder any way you look at it.
Thank you, sir. We'll give you the last word. And we're just going to ask everybody, that when you step up to the microphone, just treat it like it's a best friend you haven't seen in a long time. Just get really close, and if you feel comfortable, you remove your mask when you're asking the question, just so folks that are here virtually can pick it up. And if you want to introduce yourself.
Hi, my name is Judy Moe, and I am the director of the Richfield Disability Advocacy Partnership, and I also sit on the legislature's task force on shelter. When people address equity, they often overlook disability and the intersectionality between disability and other historically marginalized groups. And we already know that a large number of people who interact with law enforcement have some type of disability. If elected, what is your current plan to work with the disability community on an ongoing basis? And if you do not currently have a plan, are you willing to commit to working with the disability community to come up with a plan?
Thank you, and I just want to salute Ms. Moe on excellent microphone technique. And we'll start with Major Witt.
So the Hennepin County Jail, as I said, the largest jail and most populated jail in the state. I can also say that we're the only jail in the state that's not accredited by one but two, to make sure that we are in compliance, not just doing the bare minimum, but doing the most possible. To answer your question more specifically, yes, having those conversations, again, we get sided, like we think that we know everything. The only way to be in the best preventative measure is to make sure that we're talking with people who that is a part of their life. So yes, to answer your question, thank you.
Thank you, Major Witt. Chief Banks?
Yes, I would definitely be willing to meet with groups to talk about what it could look like.
All right, thank you.
Hi. So both of you have said that you need to do a better job.
Can you introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi, my name's Alan. I live in Hennepin County. Both of you have said that you will need to do a better job regulating no-knock warrants. Specifically, it's already not common practice, but still, sometimes there are transgressions. How specifically will you do that better job of regulating no-knock warrants?
And we'll start with Chief Banks.
Well, I would personally meet with the chiefs of police, because I really think we need a unified process of doing it. I don't want to find out that one police department's policy dictates a different method in what they're doing it. I think if we have a standard policy across the board throughout the county, it makes it that much easier. So I would be working with the chief of police in each department in the county to try to develop that policy.
Thank you, Major Witt.
Where I do know I make the differences for the sheriff's office, because I do have oversight over that policy. As we know, sheriff's office is a very different entity from municipalities. So for the what I know I can do, that's an immediate change. It's making sure that it goes through different levels, different eyes are being put on it from one level to the next. Not just the people who are initiating and executing those warrants, but as administration, even before it goes to a judge, because all warrants are signed off by a judge, right? So making sure you know the cases. It in regards to like a unified throughout the county, that would be great, but I also realize that as the sheriff, I cannot tell another chief how to regulate or what to do on their policies, but I can lead from the front and show them the effectiveness of how to do it the right way. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Come on up if you could share your name. If you feel comfortable taking your mask off while you ask the question, that would be great.
Hi, I'm Deanna, and I am part of MIRAC. My question has to do with accountability. I think that oftentimes the common person, the common resident feels that aside from protesting or being very loud or going out into the streets, holding law enforcement officers accountable is very, very difficult. And I know that being seated at the table and having a voice at the table has been mentioned a couple times, but it doesn't really matter if those voices aren't given the power to actually like act on their opinions. So I guess my question would be, with regard to like accountability and the intersection with actual like feedback from citizens, from residents of the county, what like actual actionable items do you have in your plan if you are elected?
I think we'll start with Chief Banks.
So again, I'm going to say it, let's be clear on this. The sheriff's department is the top cop in the county. Along with all the other responsibilities that the sheriff had with the jail, it is the sheriff's responsibility to police the police, all right? That's why we're here today, because that has been a blurred issue for many years, all right? It is the sheriff's job to make sure that we're holding our law enforcement officers accountable in our county. Let me go one step to say that the sheriff is responsible for the entire safety of the county, okay? To include making sure that the police departments are held accountable. That has not happened in the past. And unfortunately, the sheriffs have always thought that we left them to their own devices. Prior to us having police departments, the sheriff department policed the communities. Cities being allowed to have their own municipalities made our job that much easier. But it is the sheriff's job to stand up and decide, I'm not going to allow officers to be no longer unaccountable.
Thank you. Major?
I'm sorry I have to use this time to correct you, Mr. Banks. There is no statute that will give you the authority to tell a municipality what to do. You lead from the front. That is not your job as the sheriff. Yes, the sheriff is the lead executive law enforcement of the county. There are statutory mandates that the sheriff is responsible for. That is not to guide or to tell other law enforcement agencies what to do. That is not in Minnesota. That's absolutely untrue. And with that being said, I do apologize because now I forgot the question because I was correct in that. Can you quick say it? Just give me a tip.
What are the actionable items, if elected, that you would have in your plan to actually like
Accountability.
hold law enforcement officers accountable, and also like I know you mentioned like giving people
Right.
a voice and a seat at the table, but it doesn't really matter if their voices aren't actually like acted upon or like actually.
So with that being said, one of the things that I did bring to Hennepin County Sheriff's Office is called guardian tracking. Guardian tracking is not only a place where people are held accountable, the deputies are held accountable by the bad things they do. It's also an opportunity to point out the good things they do. More importantly, there's an early alert system that is built into that will alert supervisors on any level, right? So it's not just one supervisor seeing it. It's any of the supervisors can see that, and they can see those early alerts. So holding people accountable is one thing, but also
Look,
making
it's your
sure-
time.
Oh, I'm sorry. You were sorry. Okay, done.
Thank you.
Can I rebut that last response?
I think we'll
just 30 seconds.
we're coming to the close, and there'll be closing statements, and then we'll give you an opportunity to address it at that point. Next question, if you could share your name.
Hello, everyone. My name is Marvina Haynes. I'm the sister of Marvin Haynes, who has been wrongfully incarcerated for the last 18 years. My question today is, in California, they have where the sheriffs can sign a bail for people who are coming in custody due to the crowdedness of the jails. Is that something that you guys here in Minneapolis will adopt or can adopt? Do you know about that?
We'll start with Chief Banks.
I'm not aware of that, so I'll have to defer that to Ms. Witt.
That would be a change in law. It is the law that sets the rules, the mandates, the policies for which a sheriff should enact. Our job as sheriff is to uphold the laws that are in place. So that would have to be something done at a governor and a legislature level.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Hi there, I'm Mary. I've been manning the online, but there have been no questions yet. So we still want to invite online questions, but I do have a question myself. And it relates to ICE access to the jail. I know officially they are allowed access. I've heard that. I know that isn't true countrywide. Many places don't do that. But if they are allowed, could it be possible that there be a advocate, an immigrant advocate there present at the time that the ICE official is there, so that the person incarcerated would not be frightened or feel forced, even though you have signs? What can you do to help protect them from making statements that in the long run would lead to their deportation?
We'll start with Major Witt.
So, as stated, yes, they're law enforcement entities, so they have the right to come in and interview. Now, I don't think what any of us want is us holding on to people longer than we should legally be holding on to them. So to set up, because we don't know, it's not set up by appointments by ICE or any other law enforcement official. If they show up, whether it's 10 o'clock at night or 6 a.m., that's one thing. What we do offer, though, if they prefer to have interpreter, that is something that is provided. But to do what you're saying would mean holding on to people longer so that they could have that representation. We have an obligation to make sure people are released at the time when they're done with all Hennepin County business. And that process would probably ensure that we hold on to people longer.
All right, thank you, Major Witt. Former Chief Banks.
Yeah, I would definitely make sure that there was an advocate available so that they could have a conversation with that advocate alone and then be advised of what their rights were.
Thank you.
We're doing okay for time, so if anybody else has got a question, we'd love to have it. And actually, I have a question, but of course, this thing is way up high for me.
There you go.
411 on a good day, right? I would like to know from you all, if you're familiar with the Hardales.
Can you lift it just a little
Oh,
bit?
yes.
There,
Thank
there you
I'll
go.
do a better job.
Thank you.
Michelle Gross with Communities United Against Police Brutality. First question is, are you familiar with the Hardale-Sherrill Act and its requirements on local jails?
Thank you. We'll start with Major Witt.
Yes, I am familiar with the Hurdle Act. And that is something that, it's interesting because in intake, where we're making sure that we get the information, who is it, if there was an emergency to occur, who do you want us to contact? I will say one of the things that's really disheartening, we know that there's a distrust for law enforcement, and that is to include corrections. What I had conversations with people about, including Hardell's mother, is how can we do a better job of making sure people know that that's not used to track people down or to get information, because we want them to give us that information so we know who to contact and when. And there's that barrier there where people don't trust us, so they don't provide that information either. And I did, again, speak to his mother specifically about that.
And Chief Banks.
So I'm not familiar with that act. If you could explain that to me.
Certainly. It's an act that was passed by the legislature 2 sessions ago. It relates to the gentleman, Hardell Sherrill, who died on the jail floor in Beltrami County Jail. It requires jails to collect information from the person being incarcerated to include their next of kin or their person that they want to have notified in case they become debilitated in the jail.
Okay. All right, I appreciate your giving me that answer. So yeah, I would definitely make sure that that's something that we're doing. We definitely need to be notifying people. Like I said, the biggest concern is that people want to know what's happening with their loved ones once they're incarcerated and if they're okay and how they can communicate with them. And so we should be notifying families immediately if something happens to them.
Thank you. And may I have a second question?
Sure.
Schedule. I have one more question for you, and that's this. Under Minnesota state statutes, let me get it closer. Under Minnesota state statutes, in Minnesota, when a person is engaged in some kind of a charge from law enforcement that is anything less than a gross misdemeanor, and even most gross misdemeanors, unless they're violent, they can get a citation and not go to jail. And because that's an option, sheriffs also have the option of when someone does appear at the jail on a citationable offense, what's called a tab charge, those sheriffs have the ability to discharge the person without actually checking them into the jail and putting them through that whole process. That's a right that you have. Would you exercise that right, and how often? Thank you.
We'll start with Chief Banks.
I would definitely exercise that right. One of the reasons because I think that Hennepin County's intake process is just too long to begin with. I don't know why it takes 4 to 6 hours to check someone into the jail, and I'm sure there's a procedural issue, but I just think that it could be done a little bit faster.
Thank you. Major Witt.
As somebody who deals with a very populated jail on a daily basis, I wish it could be done faster. The last thing we want is to hold people there longer than they should be. When asking that question, we could speak for the sheriff's office as far as, okay, writing a citation, there's book and release, there's certain things where that's not an option. However, we are not responsible for another agency when they bring someone to our jail. So, I think the sheriff's office gets held for a lot of responsibility that is not our actual responsibility. So coming into intake, and again, it's a very populated jail. I don't want people there on misdemeanors. If you look at our population right now, I can tell you the top 5 reasons that we have people there are murder, weapons, domestics, violent crimes. The top 5 accounts for 85% of the populated people there, not misdemeanors, which is also, I will say, something that has decreased in the last several years, where we did have a lot of people held on trespassing, invading,
Major Witt, that's your
fair,
time.
and things like that. Thank you. I might have to talk faster.
Well, and I'll just ask this question. I'm going to give you 2 minutes, the 2-part question. 1, what's your favorite thing about being a law enforcement officer? And 2, could you share an experience that you've had that you think really embodies what you think it means to be a public safety officer or a law enforcement officer? And I'll start with you, Major Witt.
As tough as this profession has been, I surround myself, if in my office, or with letters and pictures of things that people who I've had encounters with showed me their appreciation with. That is so important. We have this knack for wanting to look at everything that bad happens, but who's getting forgotten? Are the victims who had some sort of justice, or the people that you changed their lives in a positive manner. Part of the best part of my career was working in a setting for a school, kids who had mental health, behavioral health issues and things like that, one of the hardest populations. It was in Dakota County. It was the kids that attended that school were from Hennepin, Ramsey, as well as Dakota County. I remember working there where kids would give me hugs, and there were other law enforcement people be like, "You hug them?" I absolutely will hug them. If that's what they need, that's what they get. They call me Mama D there, and not Deputy Witt. But those are the best parts, and I got to remember that, because I will tell you, sometimes this job is so hard. I have been called so many names. I have been accused of things that just aren't me. What people have not seen during the duration of my career is all the good that's been done. And there's a lot. There's a lot of it. And we need to do better about sharing those precious moments. In regards to, oh geez, I forgot your second part.
Is this your favorite thing about being a law enforcement
My favorite
officer?
thing is helping people. I try every day to be that officer, that person that I needed when I was a kid, because I did not have it easy growing up. And I was looking for somebody to help me, and I didn't forget that. And so I do my best every day, not just when things get bad, every day to make sure I make a difference. That's why I've been able to last in this profession this long. Thank you.
Thank you. Chief Banks?
My favorite thing is just being able to deal with the people. I love the people, helping people, seeing them grow, seeing what I do, how it impacts them, how it changes their lives. This is the best job. I get to be outside, I get to interact with the people, and the plus side of it is I get paid to do it. So I love that. And when I look back over some impacts, I think back to a young man some years ago that I pulled over on a traffic stop because he was weaving out of lane. Initially, I thought it was going to be a DWI stop, and it turns out he was having a bad day. He was 19 years old. His girlfriend had just dumped him. His mom told him he had to leave home, and he told me that day he wanted to die. For a few minutes, I was able to get his mom on the phone. She actually came out. We had the paramedics transport him. And that young man went on to have a good life, but the fact of the matter was that day, I felt like I made a change in his life. I felt like I gave him a few minutes to buy himself a better day. So when I look at how I impact people, that taught me to slow things down and think about what my actions mean to the person I'm affecting. And that's why I love doing this job.
Thank you. Do we have any other? Great.
We have a question from online that says, how would you plan to address and fight crime in the school system?
Thank you. We'll start with you, Chief Banks.
So my plan is to bring cop schools or cop houses back to the community so that, the kids get a chance to interact with police officers in a non-threatening environment, and not just the kids, but also the family members. I truly believe that once we know these kids and these kids know us, there'll be a different opinion. It's a different concept when I can talk to a kid and he knows my name and I know his name. So the biggest part is basically teaching kids that it's okay to be around cops, teaching cops that it's okay to know people, and teaching them to learn to get people to do better things, right? Looking at the whole picture, not just one end of the thing, looking at how we got here today.
Great. Thank you. Major Witt.
As I said, the best part of my career was when I was a school resource officer. I know some people think that is a open door or that pipeline to prisons, and not when you have the right people. We need to be proactive and not always reactive. Building those relationships with the kids that are in the schools. I am a big advocate for school resource officers in every school. As my time there, I can tell you I've had conversations with kids where they would come to me for that help because I had that relationship and I had that trust. I was that open avenue to help them. So I think we need to make sure that we're doing that. But then the bigger picture here is making sure that we are proactive in every means, whether it's playing basketball or just even showing up at events, the football games, basketball games, whatever it is. But making sure that it's not always responding to something bad. You never stop community engagement. It's not, that has to be a continuous process and always trying to build better relationships and, more importantly, trust with our younger generations all the time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Have another question here. So what would you do if you face resistance from staff that aren't following directives or other policies that you're setting?
That was one I wanted to ask. That's an excellent question. We'll start with you, Major Witt.
It's progressive discipline. I think as law enforcement, sheriff's office, more specifically each agency, being transparent on how their progressive discipline works. I think it's also important to talk about the power that the unions have or these mediators. Law enforcement has been doing better with firing people who have not followed the policies or the missions of their leadership. and then to be forced to give them those jobs back because mediation says so is something that ties the hands of law enforcement leadership. But making sure that if that happened to me, where I was forced to have someone who is not good for the community, well, I guess I'm going to be asking for your help with getting me a whole bunch of desks, because they will not, under my watch, be engaged with the community if I am ever forced to make sure to keep somebody on staff. Thank you.
Thank you, Major. Chief Banks?
Definitely accountability. Constantly stand on top of it, documenting it. But in the end, like I said, if I decide or determine that you are not doing what's best in the interest of the community, you're gone. I don't care how many union meetings we have to have, you're gone. It may cost our agency a few extra bucks, and I get that, but you're gone. There is no need to keep a bad apple in that bunch. And that's what we've done for so long, too long, right?
Thank you. Do we have I think we have probably time for one more question. This will be the last question.
That sounds good. So we received a comment online wondering about more information about that statistic that Major Witt, you brought up. There is a report from the Hennepin County Sheriff's Office in August 2018 stating that 71% of inmates were in for nonviolent crimes, which sounds different from what you had brought up before. So wondering if perhaps you could elaborate more on that?
Yeah, as I said, when I came back to Hennepin County Sheriff's Office in 2019, we have decreased that. It has decreased. I am confident in saying it's less than 5% and maybe even 3% that are there on misdemeanors. The majority of people held at Hennepin County Jail is there for felonies, and I would feel confident saying that that's probably around 80%, if not a little bit more. That's one of the things I want to include on the dashboard so people can see those statistics all the time, and that's why that's another initiative that I'm taking for the sake of transparency.
And since that was directed primarily to Major Witt, Chief Banks, if you wanted to take a moment and just talk, you wanted to clarify the record a little bit, I'll give you a chance to do that.
Yeah, I want to say simply this. The sheriff does have the ability to hold folks accountable. It is a misnomer. It's been there for years. If an officer commits a criminal offense, we're going to hold them accountable. All right? And that's been the problem. People have been afraid. They felt they've had no place to take those complaints when an officer abused them or misused power. As the sheriff, I am going to investigate that individual. If the facts determine there warrants an arrest, there will be an arrest made and the case referred to the county for prosecution. That's what I'm saying when we hold people accountable.
All right, thank you. And with that, I want to thank both of our candidates and all of our participants for a really fruitful discussion and for your service, both leading up to this moment and continuing on through this moment, and in both of your leadership moving forward. And so with that, I want to give you both the opportunity to make closing statements, and we'll start with Major Witt.
Well, first off, thank you for having me and having us and opening up these conversations. Your questions were very good. Any time that we can have where we're talking about the tough questions, right, with the tough answers, is something that we should do. You know, what I'm running my campaign on is collaboration, jail reform, and violence. We need to talk about the violence that are in our communities. I realize, though, that is something that is a collaboration with the people in the community that are living this life. I do believe that nobody or no community will move forward or be better in a time of fear. And I will take on the responsibility of saying that also means making sure that our law enforcement is treating people with dignity and respect all the time. We are not the judge and jury. And I will make sure that as your next sheriff of Hennepin County, that is something that I will not negotiate on. I will demand that is something that is done by the deputies that work for the Hennepin County Sheriff's Office. I will lead from the front, and I will be approachable, I will be engaging, and I will be reachable for all you all. Something else I want to add real quick is that I didn't talk about it, but we talked about advisory boards. Our students, our juveniles, they are very important. So advisory boards, that's something I also want to develop for our kids. Having a student advisory board to the sheriff, because they see life through very different lenses than we do. I look forward to conversations in the future with people, and I have no doubt that I am the best candidate to be the sheriff of Hennepin County. I will not let you down. It's not in my DNA. Thank you.
Thank you. And if folks want to follow you or get in touch with you or your campaign, is there socials, or how should they find you?
Yes, sorry. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Dewana Witt for Sheriff. You could find me there. There's a phone number. There's ways that you could text as well. Again, I'm also the major at the Hennepin County Sheriff's Office, so if it's non-candidate related, if there's an issue that you have or a question that you have about the current Sheriff's Office and our operations, you can find me at hennepincounty.us. So, thank you.
Thank you. And former Chief Banks?
Well, it's been a great night. I want to thank you guys for having us. I want to tell Ms. Witt I'm always happy to have a spirited conversation. I love this lady. This is what I love about this job, is that we can have different views and still get along, right? This job is about collaboration, both community and law enforcement. Any conversation that does not include the people is not a conversation. The power comes from the people. I'm going to make that change. Things sound just slightly different from me because I'm different. I'm something different. That's what we want, is something different, something positive, and something that's going to be effective and keep the community safe. I'm going to challenge the way police have done things for years. That's definitely me. I'm going to challenge that. We're going to change it, and on my watch, it's going to be different. We are not going to have the same things happen to the people in our community that have been going on in the past and that we've allowed to happen. So a vote for me means immediate change and accountability. That's why you want to vote for me, and that's why I'm your best candidate.
Thank you. And then if folks want to find you and learn more about your campaign, where should they go?
You can reach me at banksforsheriff.com. That's BANKS, the number 4sheriff.com. You can find me on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. You can also reach me at joelawman@hotmail.com. That's JOELAWMAN @hotmail.com. And of course, my phone is always available at 763-221-4724. Oh, and one more. On Wednesdays from 4 to 5, I do host a show called Let's Talk About It on MCN 6, where you, the community, can drop in, give your opinion, ask a question, and talk about what our platform looks like. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And for everybody here, for DCC, for all of our partners, for everybody that came out on this cold night, and for our school district, but especially if you found value in both these candidates for coming out here and speaking with us directly and with candor, would you give yourselves and them a great round of applause? Thank you very much. Have a great evening, folks.
We don't use them. We get like kind of I'm sure you are.